The lawyer's voice cut through the stillness of the room, every word sinking into me like a weight. The family residence and all primary assets go to Caroline Mercer. Caroline reached for her husband Grant's hand. They smiled, their satisfaction bold and unashamed, as though this was the victory they had waited for. I kept my face steady, the way I had through 42 years of marriage. Surely Ray had left something for me. Surely there was more. The lawyer cleared his throat, his tone clipped and final. And to my wife Martha Hale, I leave the property in Colorado near the national park. That was it. Caroline leaned back in her chair, eyes wide with delight. That's all. The silence became a roar in my ears. I felt every gaze turned toward me, waiting for a reaction. But I gave them nothing, because what I felt in that moment could not be spoken aloud. Caroline was quick to fill the silence with her own brand of generosity. Of course, Mother can stay with us. At least until she gets settled, she said smoothly, patting Grant's arm as if the two of them were saints offering me charity. The room nodded along, relieved to see the tension softened by her words, but I could feel the edges of the trap. 2 weeks later I understood exactly what her kindness meant. The home that had once been mine was now a stage where I played no role. My bedroom reduced to the guest room. My seat at the head of the table gone, replaced by Caroline's carefully arranged centerpieces and Grant's booming voice over dinner. I cooked the meals, I cleaned the dishes, and when their friends arrived, I stayed out of sight. I was no longer the heart of the household but the shadow that moved silently through its corners. One evening, as the last guest's laughter faded into the night, Grant cornered me in the kitchen. He swirled bourbon in one of Ray's old crystal tumblers. "This isn't working, Martha," he said. I kept my hands busy, scraping food from plates, pretending his words meant nothing. "You were carried your whole life," he continued, leaning on the counter. "Ray did it. Caroline does it now. But we need our space. Independence will be good for you." The word independence landed like a stone. What he really meant was exile, and I knew it. The next morning I opened my bedroom door and stopped short. My suitcases were sitting in the hallway, already zipped and waiting like obedient dogs. Caroline appeared behind me, her smile carefully composed. She kissed my cheek as though nothing were unusual. "Mother, we think it's time. You should see what Dad left you. It's your place now." Grant followed with a sealed envelope in his hand. He pressed it into mine with smug finality. "Directions to the cabin, keys inside. Don't come back until you've figured out how to stand on your own 2 feet. We're not running a charity here." Caroline added softly, as if to soften the blow, "It's for your own good, Mom? You'll thank us one day?" Her hug was stiff, rehearsed, already finished before it began. At 68 years old, I walked down the steps carrying the remnants of my life. I loaded the bags into the modest sedan Ray had bought me 3 years earlier, the car that now felt like my only lifeline. The house I had built, the family I had raised, all of it stood behind me like a locked door. And for the first time in decades, I had nowhere to return to. The drive stretched across the day, each mile heavy with questions I couldn't answer. I left Helena Ridge behind, the only town I had ever called home, and followed the directions on the folded paper Grant had handed me. For hours the highway carried me through endless plains and winding foothills, until pavement gave way to gravel, and gravel thinned into a rutted dirt path. My phone signal vanished, as if the world itself had decided to abandon me too. The last 30 minutes were nothing but switchbacks carved into the side of a mountain, each turn steeper, lonelier than the one before. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road. Finally the cabin appeared, slouched at the edge of the trees. A sagging porch leaned toward the ground. Shingles were missing from the roof, windows were cracked and patched with boards. It looked like the kind of place you passed quickly, not one you entered. I parked in front of it, my heart heavy. "Ray, why here?" I whispered into the stillness. The house stood silent, its face weary and unforgiving, and I wondered if this was all my marriage of 4 decades had left me an abandoned shell at the edge of the wilderness. I forced the rusted key into the lock. The door groaned on its hinges as if it hadn't opened in years. I braced myself for cobwebs and dust, but what greeted me was nothing like I expected. The cabin's interior glowed with warmth. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath soft rugs. A leather sofa faced a stone fireplace already set with logs. The kitchen sparkled with stainless steel appliances that looked as though they had just been polished. I froze in the doorway, my suitcase slipping from my hand. The table near the window was set for one. A plate with crumbs of bread, a mug half full of coffee, and a notebook left open, as if someone had just stepped out for a moment. The handwriting inside the notebook made my breath catch. Precise, slanted script I knew better than my own. Raise. I turned to the date at the top of the page. It was 3 days ago. My knees weakened, and I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. Ray had been gone, buried, mourned for weeks. Yet here was his hand, alive on paper, alive in the smallest details of the room. The entry was brief but chilling. Martha will be arriving soon. Everything must be in place. God, I hope she understands. The walls seemed to lean closer around me, holding secrets I wasn't ready for. And for the first time since Ray's funeral, I was more afraid of the truth than of the lies I had been living with. The silence pressed in on me, heavy and unnatural. I wandered deeper into the cabin, each room a contradiction to the decayed exterior. A study sat with papers spread across a desk, as if someone had stepped out mid-thought. A bedroom held rumpled sheets, the imprint of a body not long gone. In the corner, a bookshelf stood slightly ajar. I reached for it hesitantly. It swung outward with surprising ease, revealing a narrow passage lit by a faint strip of bulbs along the floor. My breath caught. The small chamber beyond looked like something from a spy thriller. The walls were covered with photographs, maps, and newspaper clippings connected by pins and colored string. Some faces I recognized instantly: politicians, business leaders, and, at the center, Grant Mercer. Notes in Ray's handwriting covered the margins, account numbers, dates, cryptic arrows pointing from one name to the next. Offshore accounts, shell companies, payments tucked neatly into the shadows of legitimate deals. In the middle of the desk sat a sealed envelope, my name written across it in Ray's familiar hand. I stared at it, paralyzed. My husband's ghost had already spoken through the furniture, through the pages of his notebook. Now he was speaking directly to me. The question wasn't whether I would open it. It was whether I was ready for what waited inside. With trembling hands, I tore the envelope open. Inside was a letter written in Ray's careful script. My dearest Martha. If you're reading this, then you've found the truth. I'm sorry for the pain and confusion this has caused you. But what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. I'm not dead, at least not in the way you believe. I read the words twice, my eyes refusing to accept what they saw. Ray explained everything: how 5 years ago, while auditing contracts for Mercer Development, he discovered money being laundered through government projects. Millions skimmed away, hidden behind shell companies. At the center was Grant, with powerful allies covering his tracks. Ray wrote how he began gathering evidence quietly but soon noticed he was being followed. Phones tapped. Our home bugged. I realized I had to disappear before they erased me. The staged heart attack, the funeral, it was the only way to survive. My pulse thundered as the letter offered me a choice. This house contains everything needed to expose them. You can take the files to Agent Ethan Ward in Loveland, or you can use the cash and new identity in the safe and vanish. Whatever you do, don't trust Caroline. She chose money over morality long ago. The last line pierced me deeper than any other. I've always known you were stronger than anyone believed, even you. I sat frozen in the hidden room, Ray's letter clutched in my hands, when I heard its tires crunching on gravel outside. The sound of car doors followed, more than one. Through the narrow slit of the window I saw them, 2 black SUVs parked in front of the cabin. Men stepped out, not tourists, not hikers trained, deliberate, moving with the silence of hunters. My chest tightened. They weren't here by mistake. They were here for me. I remembered Ray's note: this house contains everything you need. My fingers brushed along the desk until I found a small panel beneath. With a push, the floor clicked open to reveal a narrow tunnel leading downward. Voices drifted through the walls, sharp commands, boots on the porch. The front door splintered open. I grabbed the go bag already waiting inside the passage. Whoever had prepared this had known the day would come. As I slipped into the tunnel, the dim bulbs lit automatically, guiding me forward. The air smelled of earth and metal. Above me, heavy footsteps searched for a widow, but beneath their boots I was already gone. The tunnel emptied into the woods 1/2 mile from the cabin. I stumbled into the night, clutching the bag against my chest. My breath came in sharp bursts, each one echoing in the silence of the trees. Headlights appeared on the dirt road ahead, and panic shot through me. I froze, ready to dive back into the brush. But the vehicle that slowed to a stop wasn't a black SUV. It was an old pickup, dented along the fender, paint sun-faded. The driver leaned out, a weathered woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a steady voice. "You lost Ma, ma'am." Her name was Nell Whitaker, a ranch owner who had lived in those mountains all her life. Something in her tone, firm but kind, made me step closer. Before I could answer, another engine roared in the distance. Black vehicles rounded the bend. One of them slowed, spotlight sweeping across the trees. Nell's eyes narrowed. "Get in, now." Bullets snapped against the tailgate as she slammed the truck into gear. Gravel sprayed behind us, the mountains swallowing us whole as we disappeared into the night. Nell's truck rattled along back roads only she seemed to know. When we finally stopped, it was at a rundown motel outside a town so small it barely had a name. She parked under a broken sign that flickered once before dying completely. Inside the office, the air smelled of old coffee and dust. Nell locked the door behind us. "Whoever's after you isn't playing games," she said. "You need someone who can fight back." I thought of the letter of Ray's instructions. My hands shook as I pulled out the phone from the go bag. One number was written on the inside flap of the envelope: Ethan Ward. When he answered, his voice was calm, clipped. "This is Ward." I hesitated. "Ray Hale sent me." Silence. Then a shift in tone, sharper alert. "Where are you?" We spoke in fragments. He confirmed details only Ray could have known, phrases from an old camping trip, the name of a dog we once had. My fear steadied into focus. Ward explained the scope. Grant wasn't alone. There was an entire network of officials and businessmen laundering money through public projects. Timing was critical. He asked if I wanted protection. "No," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I want justice." Dawn crept over the mountains like a slow breath. I stood at the motel window, watching the horizon pale, when Ward's convoy of unmarked SUVs rolled quietly into town. Agents moved with precision, radios crackling softly, their faces unreadable. "This is it," Ward said, sliding a vest over his shirt. "Once it begins, it moves fast." From the safety of a distance, Nell and I watched as the sweep unfolded. At the Mercer home, Grant was pulled from the porch in his robe, fury spilling from him as his hands were cuffed behind his back. Caroline bolted through the garden, hair wild, her bare feet slapping against the stone path. For one tense moment, I thought she might reach the street. But a car blocked her path, doors flung open, agents surrounding her. She lifted something in her hand and my breath stopped until I saw it was only a phone, not a gun. She dropped it when the agents shouted. No one cheered, no one clapped. The work was methodical, silent. Justice doesn't roar. It arrives in plain cars at sunrise and leaves with nothing more than signatures and silence. Months later, the courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and nerves. Reporters filled the benches, their pens ready to catch every word. But for me, the trial wasn't about headlines. It was about truth. When my name was called, I walked slowly to the stand. My palms were damp, yet my voice held steady as I swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor guided me through the story. I described the cabin, the hidden room, the letter in Ray's hand. I spoke of the night the SUVs came, of Nell's truck riddled with bullet holes, of the fear that still woke me in the dark. Photos were shown, maps, bank records. My testimony became one more thread in a web already wide with evidence. Then came the cross-examination. "Miss Hale," the defense attorney said smoothly, "isn't it true you were resentful of your daughter's inheritance?" "No," I replied. "Isn't it possible grief distorted your memory?" I held his gaze. I remember the sound of gunfire when my daughter raised a weapon at me. Grief doesn't create bullet holes. The room stilled. Even the attorney hesitated before turning back to his notes. For one brief moment, I looked at Caroline. She avoided my eyes, staring hard at the table in front of her. I wanted to remember her as the child who once held my hand in the grocery store, tugging me toward candy. But the truth sat between us now, undeniable. And truth, once spoken aloud, cannot be taken back. The jury returned after 2 long days. I sat rigid in the front row, Nell's hand folded gently over mine. The foreman's voice was even, stripped of emotion, as he read the verdicts one by one. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Grant Mercer bowed his head as if the weight finally broke his spine. Caroline stood tall at first, her chin lifted in defiance, but as the counts piled up, her shoulders sagged. When the judge pronounced her sentence 27 years in federal prison, the air seemed to collapse around us. Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked, but inside me there was no triumph. There was only silence. Justice, I realized, doesn't come with applause. It doesn't heal the wound or return what was stolen. It signs its name on a piece of paper and waits for the world to carry on. As the bailiff led my daughter away, she never once looked back at me. Perhaps that was her last act of defiance. Or perhaps it was her only way to survive the shame. Months later, I returned to the cabin in Colorado, the house that had lied to me, hidden from me, and nearly destroyed me. But now it was different. Repairs had been finished, the roof no longer sagged, the porch stood straight and welcoming. Inside, light spilled across polished floors. The shadows that once carried fear now felt like corners for rest. I set up a studio in the spare room, paints and brushes spread across a wide table. For years I had silenced that part of myself, too busy being wife, mother, caretaker. Now, with the quiet of the mountains around me, I began again. The kitchen became exactly as I once dreamed it might be: bright counters, open shelves, a place that was mine in both design and spirit. I chose to stay, not because I needed to hide, but because I finally understood that survival is more than escaping danger. It is choosing how to live when the danger has passed. Looking back, I see more than betrayal and loss. I see lessons carved into every mile, every bruise, every silence. If something feels wrong, trust the instinct to pay attention. Write things down. Keep a record. The smallest note can one day become the strongest proof. Independence is not tied to age. At 68, I learned to stand alone, to fight for truth with no one but strangers at my side. You can learn it too, no matter when you start. And remember, this truth isn't vengeance. Truth is oxygen. It clears the air so you can finally breathe. If this story has touched you, share your thoughts below. Like, share, and subscribe. Your voice is what keeps this space alive.